Have I ever told you guys how much I love Trial Mountain? Of course I haven't. You know why? Because this is the first time it's shown up for Daily C in 2 years. 2 years, Polyphony Digital. Granted, it regularly shows up for Daily B, but Daily B is often a wreckfest, so I don't usually bother with it. So when it finally did show up, along with strategy options, I simply couldn't resist racing it again on Tuesday. Even if it loses me some views to put this video out a day later than normal, totally worth it. I had a blast. This race is from Tuesday in a stacked lobby against some of the game's fastest drivers. So right at the start there you see that Damien, who was starting one place in front of us, has decided to drop to the back of the race. This actually isn't as good for me as you might think, because this puts me right at the limit of the usable slipstream to Slayers in front, and if I'm not within half a second heading onto the back straight, those guys are going to be able to pull away from me and I'm going to lose touch with them straight away, and that leaves me being a sitting duck to the guys behind. However, thankfully, I managed to pretty much nail Sector 1. Slayers makes a small mistake there, and I am well and truly in touch heading onto the back straight. And as we head down the back straight here, it's actually Slayers that is slightly losing contact with the front three. You can see here as we get to the bottom of the straight there's a little bit of a gap developing, and then Slayers tags the wall here. Now I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying that I'm a faster driver than Slayers. He is categorically 100% faster than me still, but we all have our bad races, we all have our off days and our moments where we're just not in the rhythm and not in the groove. Keep your eye on the leader, Lewis, in P1, and you see there that he has a spin. Let's look at the replay there. This is the strangest crash I think I've ever seen. I'm assuming this isn't actually what happened. Maybe he just got on the grass and spun. Maybe the lag in some degree caused this, but yeah, looked pretty strange from the replay afterwards. Lewis isn't out of the race though, not by any stretch of the imagination. The fact that he's in the BRZ does allow him to get back into this race, combined with of course his phenomenal pace, so he will be featuring again later. Back to the race, and the objective now is to try and work with Slayers and Calster and see if we can catch up to the leaders. However, as the next couple of laps progress, it becomes increasingly evident that Slayers is slowly losing contact with the leading two. I try to be patient with this as much as possible. I'm more than well aware of what Slayers is capable of. I know he's just having an off day, so if I try to work with him, try to bump draft him whenever possible, I'm hoping that he'll settle down into his rhythm and the three of us can make better progress than the two leaders can together. However, as we approach the end of lap 3, I decide that it would probably be better at this moment in time if I led the three of us, or at least if I was setting the pace here. I felt that I could set a better pace and that maybe that would help Slayers to settle into his rhythm. So coming out of the chicane, Slayers has a small tap on the wall, loses a bit of speed. I get a little bump draft from Calster behind, and I decide that this has to be the moment that I go for it. Slayers immediately lifts off the throttle to allow me to go through. He does that so as to waste the minimal time possible, so now we're up to P3. However, this was the moment where I pretty much realised I'd left it a little bit too late. I don't think we have any hope of catching Nicholas and Dremin anymore, and that effectively means I am the leader of a second race here, a race for P3. As we come round this corner, I had a big moment, and honestly, with what I felt in the force feedback, I thought the car had gone. I genuinely thought, I've lost it, I'm not going to hold on to this. It was one of those heart-in-mouth moments when you genuinely are shocked that you managed to save the car, and then you have to snap back to reality and get into the zone again immediately so that you don't make another mistake and lose even more time. So now, with a large gaggle of super fast drivers right behind me and no hope of catching P1 and 2, I decided I might as well defend this. As I said, effectively being the leader in the race for P3, the best place to be to try and ensure you get that result is P3. I don't mind one or two guys overtaking me and working with them, but there are 6 super fast drivers right behind me, and there's a strong possibility if I don't defend it, I'm just going to get swallowed up. So since P3 is the best I can get from this race, I'm defending it. Jumping forwards to lap 5, remember Lewis spun from the lead on lap 1 and I said he wasn't out of it? I had to pause the video here so that you could see it because it's a blink of an eye moment, but Lewis has pitted on lap 5. This is something that only the BRZ can do, maybe the RX Vision, McLaren 2. Basically, he's performing an undercut. So the rest of us are going to pit on lap 6. Lewis is going to gain best part of a couple of seconds maybe on an undercut, and then all that battling and defending as well, that has also enabled him to close the gap. In the M6, I believe the optimal lap to pit is lap 7, but being the lead car here, I simply couldn't risk it. If I stayed out and everyone behind me chose to pit, they would all still be able to work together and utilise the slipstream and the bump drafting, and I potentially would lose touch with them even though I would be on fresher tyres. We also had to cover off Lewis's undercut, which has worked for him because you can now see that he is literally only 2 cars behind me. As we jump forwards to the back straight, Calster decides to go for the move and Lewis follows him. There's pretty much nothing I can do to defend this because I'm pretty sure Lewis had been bump drafting Calster. When they're working together, they've got that much overspeed that they can go inside or outside. It doesn't really matter, they'll go past you. I'm okay with it at the moment though, because as you can see we have generated a little bit of a gap to the guys behind, so I'm happy to sit in Calster and Lewis's slipstream and then try and retake those positions later in the race. On lap 8 though, Calster picks up a penalty, so now all I need to do is try and stay as close as possible so that I can take that position for free when Calster serves the penalty at the line. You need to be really careful going for moves into turn 1. If you aren't completely alongside heading into the turn, it's a very high risk corner to go for moves. However, we were completely alongside, we got it done. It was a little bit touch and go to be honest with you, because whilst I'm confident in my pace at this track, the one corner that I really struggle with is the final chicane. So that leaves me now with just one more target. And the interesting thing here is Lewis doesn't have a slipstream and he's in the BRZ. And the BRZ is lightning fast through these medium and high speed corners due to its downforce. But on the straight, it's a bit of a sitting duck if it doesn't have a slipstream to defend against you. What that means is I can bide my time and just try and slipstream past Lewis for 3rd place. The only question is, when do I do this? Do I do it on lap 10 or do I do it on lap 11? I decided to go for it on lap 10. My reasoning here was that the BRZ would have a very hard time slipstreaming back past me on lap 11. And with 1.5 laps to go, alliances tend to go out of the window at this point, so I was also banking on some battling between Lewis, Calster and Damien right behind me that would enable me to maintain P3. Had it been one of the other 2 cars, had Damien or Calster been the car in front of me, I would have waited until lap 11, because those cars are fast enough in their own right to slipstream back past me on the long straight. So, 1 lap to go. And if I'm honest with you, with the 3 names directly behind me, the only thing making me feel reasonably confident of holding on to this podium was the fact that Lewis was in the BRZ. Don't get me wrong, Lewis is rapid, faster than me, so's Calster, so's Damien, but that BRZ in a straight line is the only thing that was giving me confidence. And even then, the BRZ's pace over a lap is scintillating here. I did some races with Mikel Hazel earlier in the day, and Mikel did a 1:49.3 in clean air in the BRZ. It's so good, I'm beginning to wonder in the right hands if it might actually be the meta car, just like Willow Springs, where the M6 is actually the anti-meta rather than the meta. However, take a look behind us, and what's happening? Damien and Calster are fighting. This gives me a bit of breathing space. There is now just a small enough but significant enough gap between Damien and Lewis, which means Lewis is not going to get a bump draft. As I said, the BRZ cannot catch me and pass me on this straight without assistance. So I now basically can't be passed unless I make a mistake. But I'll be honest with you, I was fine with the pressure and the nerves in this race. I was very much in the zone right up until this moment. And you can see actually that little tap there from Lewis in the corner. That's not his fault, that's my fault. He was caught out by how slow I was in that turn. Why? Because I had snapped out of the zone. I was no longer in the flow state, and I was just willing myself to stop making stupid mistakes and cross the damn line, you idiot, Luke. Yeah, so if you still suffer with race nerves, they don't get to me very often, but every now and then it still happens. But there we go. P3 in this lobby with those names, honestly, felt like a win. Thank you guys ever so much for watching. You know what you got to do. Get out of here and go race.